They didn't just doubt me, they mocked me. Every single one. My parents, my friends, my coworkers. My name's Diego Brock. I'm 34 now, but this all started when I was 25, stuck in a cubicle job I hated. I was the guy answering emails for people who made 10 times my salary while pretending not to hate every second of it. At night, though, I was building something. An online store. It wasn't pretty. I didn't know what I was doing at first. My office was a beat-up laptop on the kitchen table of my parents' house, with a cracked coffee mug holding pens and a stack of Post-it notes covered in half-baked ideas. I worked like a ghost. 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., office job. 5:30 p.m. to 11 p.m., my business. I taught myself everything from scratch. How to code a basic website, how to run ads without blowing my whole paycheck, how to negotiate with suppliers who were halfway across the world. It was messy. I made mistakes that cost me weeks of work. And for a long time, it didn't make any money. That was all my parents needed to decide it was a waste of time. Diego, you're smart, my mom would say, in that tone people use right before telling you you're being an idiot. Why don't you go back to school and get a degree in something stable? My dad, he didn't even sugarcoat it. You can't feed a family off a computer screen. You're chasing something that's not real. Every Sunday dinner, they'd ask me when I was going to quit playing businessman and focus on a real career. Sometimes they'd laugh. Sometimes they'd shake their heads like I was a stubborn kid refusing to grow up. My friends weren't any better. I remember one Friday night, I skipped going out because I was redesigning my website. The group chat blew up with memes about me making millions from my imaginary company. Another time, they actually printed me a fake business card that said Diego Brock, professional basement CEO, and handed it to me at a bar. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, but inside, I was furious. And then there were my coworkers. One guy from accounting would call me CEO every time I walked into the break room, but not in a nice way. In that smug, you're a joke way. Another coworker liked to ask, "So how's Brock Industries doing?" Loud enough for everyone to hear. And people would chuckle like they were in on some inside joke. One time I had my laptop open during lunch, tweaking ad copy for my site. My boss walked by, looked at the screen, and said, "Hope you're not betting your future on that thing." The truth is, there were nights I almost believed them. When my ad campaigns flopped, when a supplier sent me garbage products I had to refund, when I was eating instant ramen for the 4th time that week because I'd spent my grocery money on shipping costs. I'd think, maybe they're right. Maybe I am just wasting my time. But quitting? That would mean proving them right, and I couldn't live with that. Year 3 was when it started to change. I found a niche product line that clicked with customers. I got better at ads. I learned how to scale without drowning in expenses. Within months, my side hustle was making more than my office job. Within a year, it was making triple. So I quit. By year 5, the business was bringing in millions. I didn't post about it online. I didn't throw it in anyone's face. I just lived differently. A newer car in the driveway, a nicer apartment, no more saying I can't afford it when invited somewhere. That's when the tune changed. The same coworkers who called me CEO as a joke were suddenly asking how they could get into e-commerce. My old friends wanted to meet for coffee and pick my brain. My parents started bragging to their friends about how Diego built a company from nothing, conveniently forgetting all the times they'd told me to quit. It wasn't pride I felt. It was something colder. The kind of clarity that makes you realize not everyone deserves a seat at your table. So I pulled back, stopped answering certain calls, kept my address private, became very selective about who I let in. But I also started noticing the other people out there, chasing a dream without anyone in their corner, getting laughed at just like I had. And that's when I got my next big idea. The moment the money came in and the laughter stopped, I thought the hard part was over. I was wrong. Making it was one thing. Keeping it and keeping my peace was another. The first wave of calls was almost amusing. People who hadn't said a real word to me in years suddenly remembered my number. Mark from accounting, the same guy who called me CEO in the break room, emailed me out of nowhere. The subject line was business opportunity. In the email, he wrote, "Hey man, I've been thinking about starting an online store. Could really use some guidance from someone who's done it. We should grab lunch, my treat. Then came Jason, one of my old friends who once handed me that fake professional basement CEO business card. He called like nothing had ever happened, talking fast about a partnership idea involving drop shipping luxury dog accessories. He even mentioned he knew a guy who could supply them, the kind of shady contact I'd learned to run from years ago. But it was my parents' shift that got to me. They went from rolling their eyes at my computer hobby to telling every one of their friends, our Diego built an entire company from scratch. He's a real entrepreneur. They started inviting me to dinners with their social circle, doctors, lawyers, retirees, and casually dropping hints like, you two should talk. Maybe you can work together. I knew what it meant. They wanted to show me off now that I was worth something. At first, I tried to be polite. I'd say, yeah, I'm really busy right now, or let's connect later. But later always came back around, and the same people who'd mocked me were now leaning in, all smiles, asking questions like, so, how much do you actually make from that thing? Do you think I could start something like yours? Would you ever invest in a friend's project? No one asked how many nights I'd stayed up until 3 a.m. tweaking code. No one cared how many product launches had flopped. All they saw was the car in my driveway and the numbers they'd heard from someone else. So I stopped explaining. I stopped showing up. I started saying no more than yes. And not just to them, but to almost everyone. It wasn't about being selfish. It was about self-preservation. One night, while scrolling through Instagram, I came across a video of a guy named Alex Renner, a musician I used to work with in my day job. He was playing guitar in the corner of a noisy bar while drunk people talked over him. It hit me how familiar his expression was, that quiet mix of frustration and stubbornness I'd felt when I was grinding away and no one believed in me. I messaged him, "You still playing full-time?" He replied almost instantly, "Trying to. Got a few gigs, still teaching on the side. Hard to get traction. No one really takes me seriously." I knew exactly how that felt. That's when the idea shifted from something vague to something I could do. I started writing down names, not the opportunists. I already knew who they were. This list was for the underdogs, people I'd seen getting mocked for chasing something unconventional, people working 2 jobs just to fund their side hustle, people who clearly weren't getting support from anyone around them. On my list, Alex Renner, musician, bar gigs, guitar lessons, no social media strategy. Lena Ortiz, jewelry designer, selling on Etsy, no website, barely breaking even. Marcus Hale, personal trainer, running boot camps in a park, struggling to keep clients. Shannon Wu, baker, selling from her kitchen under cottage laws, swamped with orders but can't afford commercial space. I didn't tell them I was watching. I just started tracking. Who supported them? Who mocked them? Who tried to take advantage of them? For a month, I lurked. I followed their social media. I checked reviews. I made small purchases or signed up for trial sessions. With Lena, I ordered a necklace. The craftsmanship was incredible, but the packaging looked like something slapped together at the last minute. I could fix that in a week. With Marcus, I took one of his boot camps. He had charisma for days, but no system for retaining clients. No email list, no upsells, nothing. With Shannon, I placed an order for a dozen cupcakes. They were phenomenal. The kind of thing you'd see in a high-end bakery, but her delivery system was a mess, and she had no time to market. And Alex, I showed up to one of his gigs. He was every bit as good as I remembered, but he was playing covers for tips while his original songs sat on a YouTube channel with 43 views. I knew the second these people made it, the vultures would swoop in, the same way they'd swooped in on me. So before I offered help, I started mapping out who they should never trust. I'd seen the same patterns in my own life. The mentor who really just wants your client list. The partner who contributes nothing but demands equity. The family member who sees you as an ATM. I wrote it all down because when I helped these people, I wasn't just going to give them money or advice. I was going to give them armor. Alex was the first one I approached. I told him, I can get you a decent website, better recordings, and actual promotion. You'll keep your style, but you'll look like a pro instead of some guy in a bar corner. He hesitated. What's the catch? There's no catch, I said. Just promise me something. When you start making it, don't let the wrong people in. Ever. He nodded. I don't think he understood yet, but he would. By the time I went to bed that night, I realized I wasn't just building businesses anymore. I was building shields for the kind of people I used to be. And if I had to step on a few opportunists along the way, so be it. Helping someone grow is easy. Protecting them from the wrong people? That's the hard part. Alex Renner was the musician who'd been playing his heart out for tips while his original songs collected dust online. Within 2 weeks of saying yes to my offer, I had him in a recording studio I rented through a friend. We laid down 3 tracks, one upbeat, one slow, one that could be used in sync licensing for TV and ads. I built him a clean website, booked a photographer for professional shots, and got his music onto every streaming platform worth being on. But the moment the buzz started, I saw the first vulture circling. A guy named Cliff Murdoch, someone who'd been in my orbit back in my early business days, suddenly popped up in Alex's Instagram comments, hyping him up. I knew Cliff. He was the type who'd talk about partnerships and synergy while quietly siphoning everything he could. I pulled Alex aside. That guy? Stay away. He'll offer you something that sounds too good to be true, and it'll cost you more than you think. Alex laughed it off at first, but 2 days later, Cliff sent him a DM promising to get him signed in exchange for a cut of everything. Alex blocked him. Lesson 1 learned. Next up was Lena Ortiz, the jewelry designer. Her work was stunning, intricate silver pieces with tiny gemstone inlays, but she was selling them on Etsy with dull photos and generic product descriptions. I bought her a proper camera setup, showed her how to shoot under natural light, and rewrote her entire product catalog. Within a month, her sales tripled. That's when her cousin, who hadn't spoken to her in years, suddenly offered to help by handling her finances so she could focus on the creative side. Sound familiar? I sat her down and told her exactly what had happened to me when I trusted the wrong person with my business. Her face went pale. She turned him down. Marcus Hale was already great at what he did. His boot camps were high energy, fun, and people clearly liked him. The problem was, once a client stopped showing up, they were gone for good. We built a simple funnel: free trial, low-cost monthly membership, premium one-on-one training. I set up an email list for him, complete with weekly fitness tips and personal check-ins. He doubled his client base in 3 months. And that's when an old college buddy of his started sniffing around, offering to invest in exchange for 30% of the brand. When Marcus told me about it, I asked, what exactly would he be bringing to the table? Marcus thought about it and realized the answer was nothing. Offer declined. Shannon Wu might have been the most talented baker I'd ever met. Her cupcakes were borderline addictive, but she was drowning in orders and had no way to expand without losing her mind. I connected her with a small commercial kitchen space I'd leased under a separate LLC. I handled the paperwork so she didn't have to deal with predatory lease terms. Within weeks, she could fulfill twice the orders without staying up all night. Her old boss, the one who'd fired her from a cafe job years earlier, suddenly reappeared, offering business mentorship in exchange for a share of her profits. I told her, that's not mentorship. That's debt in disguise. She walked away. Here's the thing about keeping opportunists out. They notice, and when they realize you're the one blocking them, they start coming for you. One night, I got a text from an unknown number. You're making enemies you can't afford. A week later, my parents called, annoyed. Apparently, one of their friends, a retired real estate guy I'd refused to meet, had been complaining that I was standoffish and hoarding my knowledge. My dad said, you should be more open, son. It's not a good look. I didn't even respond. Helping these 4 wasn't about the money. I didn't need theirs, and they didn't need mine once they had the right tools. It was about making sure they never had to sit through the same kind of conversations I'd had, the ones where your friends smirk, your coworkers laugh, and your parents give you that pitying look because they've already decided you're a failure. And maybe, selfishly, it was about rewriting my own history. By the end of 6 months, all 4 of them were thriving, and none of them had taken a single deal from someone who didn't deserve to be in their corner. But I knew this was just the start, because the more success they had, the the bigger the target on their backs would get. And some of the people circling them now weren't just old friends or distant relatives. They were people with real influence, the kind who could ruin reputations overnight. It's one thing to keep a greedy cousin or an old coworker away from your success. It's another to block someone with connections, power, and the ability to make life difficult for everyone you care about. That's the fight I found myself in. It started with Alex. His music was finally gaining traction. A small regional station picked up one of his songs, and his YouTube views were climbing into the tens of thousands. Then one day, his Spotify page was flagged for fraudulent streaming activity and temporarily taken down. The accusation was baseless, but it didn't happen by accident. A contact of mine confirmed it came from a third-party report, which is usually code for someone with enough industry pull to have their complaints taken seriously without proof. The name attached to that report? A manager who'd been circling Alex for weeks. Someone I'd told him to avoid. It wasn't just Alex. Lena's jewelry store suddenly got a wave of fake one-star reviews, all using similar wording, dragging her products and calling her a scammer. Marcus had his Facebook ads account shut down for policy violations that didn't exist. Shannon's commercial kitchen lease almost fell apart after an anonymous complaint claimed she was violating health codes, even though she'd passed every inspection. These weren't coincidences. This was pressure, and it wasn't hard to figure out why. The same people who'd been blocked from latching on to these businesses were now trying to destroy them out of spite, maybe to scare me into letting them back in. I had two options. Go public. Expose these people for what they were. Stay in the shadows and fight quietly. Going public would have meant risking my own privacy, the one thing I'd fought to protect since my own business took off. It also would have dragged Alex, Lena, Marcus, and Shannon into the spotlight before they were ready. So I chose the quiet route. I hired a digital forensics team I'd used years ago to trace the origins of the attacks. The fake reviews on Lena's store? They were all posted from a small set of IP addresses tied to a marketing agency run by one of her cousin's friends. Marcus's ad account shut down, triggered by multiple false reports, all coming from a single user, an old college buddy he'd turned down for an equity deal. Shannon's anonymous complaint? Filed from a phone registered to her former boss. Once I had the evidence, I didn't threaten them. I didn't send a lawyer's letter. I just quietly sent the proof to the right people, platform admins, landlords, ad account reps, and watched the attacks disappear. None of them dared try again. My parents called me a month later. They'd heard from people in town that I was holding grudges and making it hard for others to get ahead. I didn't bother explaining. I just said, the people who tried to get ahead off me without earning it never cared if I got left behind. Silence on the line. Then my dad muttered something about becoming cold before hanging up. By the end of that year, Alex was touring, Lena was booked with orders 3 months out, Marcus was running classes full-time, and Shannon had opened a small bakery. They were thriving. They were protected. And I was done. Not because I didn't want to help others, but because I knew if I kept going, I'd eventually cross someone even more dangerous. And I wasn't willing to lose the life I'd built to keep fighting battles that weren't mine to start with. I still keep the list, though. Not to interfere, but to watch, to see who makes it despite the noise, and who gets tripped up by the same hands that once tried to drag me down. Some days, I think about reaching out to the next name on that list. Other days, I just close it, shut off my phone, and enjoy the quiet I fought so hard for. Because the truth is, the only people who really deserve your help are the ones who would have helped you when you had nothing. And those people, they're rare. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. If you want to share your stories, please comment below. Additionally, what is your opinion on the poster's decision?